It was a Tuesday morning in early October when Derrick Jones stepped onto the concrete courtyard of Eastwood High School in Houston, Texas. The air was brisk for once, no sweltering humidity, just a clean breeze that ruffled the tops of the flowering red flame trees scattered along the perimeter of the schoolyard. A few clouds crawled across the pale sky, and students buzzed between classes like bees drifting between hives. Derrick, tall and clean-cut, wore his usual, a crisp white button-down shirt tucked into charcoal gray slacks, polished shoes that clicked lightly against the cement, and a black lanyard around his neck with a plastic badge that read in bold, Assistant Principal. Derrick Jones. He was 38, with the build of someone who used to play ball in college but had traded it for textbooks and after-school programs. His hair was cropped close to his scalp, his beard neatly trimmed, and his expression calm, always calm. Students respected him, not out of fear, but because he respected them first. He remembered names. He remembered birthdays. He showed up to games, plays, science fairs. He was the kind of man who gave a damn, and in a school like Eastwood, that meant everything. That morning, he spotted Marcus Williams standing alone near the far side of the courtyard, back pressed against the wall, arms folded. Marcus was a sophomore, 15, lanky, always twitching his knee like he was ready to run. Lately, his grades had slipped and his attendance was spotty. Derrick had made a note to check in with him. Derrick walked over, slow and deliberate. No need to spook the boy. "Hey, Marcus," he said with a soft nod. "How you holding up today?" Marcus looked up, startled, then forced a shrug. "I'm fine. That's not what your math teacher says. Miss McGill told me you haven't turned in anything for 2 weeks. That doesn't sound like you." Marcus shifted his weight. "Just been tired. Lot going on at home." Derrick nodded, reading between the lines. "I hear you. You want to talk about it now, or maybe during lunch? We could grab a soda." Marcus gave a tight smile. "Yeah, lunch sounds cool." "All right," Derrick said, tapping his shoulder gently. "You got this, Marcus. Don't let the weight of the world sit on your shoulders alone. You hear me?" "Yes, sir." Somewhere behind them, a girl laughed. A backpack dropped. The bell hadn't rung yet, and the courtyard was still full of small morning chaos. Then, on the second floor, behind the tinted windows of classroom 204, a hand held up a cell phone. Sophia Grant was a junior with a short attention span and a tendency to panic. Her parents had drilled into her the need to be cautious, especially around strangers. That morning, she had arrived early to make up a quiz, and from her perch at the window, she saw what she thought was a strange man, tall, broad, unfamiliar, cornering a student against the far wall. She couldn't see Derrick's ID badge. She didn't recognize him, not from that angle. She panicked. 911 was dialed. She whispered into the phone, "There's a man. I don't know who he is, he's grabbing a student. I think something bad is happening." The dispatcher asked questions. Sophia, nervous, gave the address. Less than 4 minutes later, a squad car received the call. Possible abduction in progress. Eastwood High. Adult male, black, mid-30s, aggressive posture with minor. They didn't wait for confirmation. Derrick was halfway back to the main hall when the squeal of tires broke through the wind. A patrol vehicle, black, white, armed and humming with adrenaline, screeched to a stop outside the school fence. 3 officers exited in a blur of blue and black, tan-skinned, white-knuckled, ice hunting. 1 officer, young and buzz-cut, radioed in, "On site. Approaching suspect." The gates were already open. A teacher, confused, stepped aside. Derrick turned. "Down," 1 officer screamed. "What the?" "Down on the ground now." Confused murmurs rippled through the students. Before Derrick could say anything, before he could raise his hands or speak, he felt something hard slam into his back. He hit the cement. His chest smacked against the sidewalk. A knee crushed the side of his neck. He gasped. "Wait, Another officer wrenched his arms behind his back. Cold steel locked around his wrists. He struggled to breathe. His badge snapped from his lanyard, landing inches away. "Gun ready," the 3rd officer shouted, pointing his weapon. "Covering." Students screamed. Phones came out. "He's the vice principal," a voice shouted. It was Marcus, still standing nearby. His voice cracked from panic. The officer with his knee on Derrick's neck didn't move. A girl pushed through the crowd, Jennifer Lynn, a senior. She had Derrick's badge in her hand, waving it wildly. "He works here. He works here." Then another voice, "We're live. Instagram live. Y'all are hurting Mr. Jones." And just like that, the momentum shifted. The officer slowly lifted his knee. Derrick sucked in air like a drowning man. The handcuffs clicked open, but the weight didn't leave his chest. He lay there, stunned, as a circle of students formed around him, phones raised, faces frozen in horror, their schoolyard now a crime scene. The lead officer backed away, face pale. We got a call. A report, he stammered. Derrick pushed himself to his knees. His shirt was torn. His lip was bleeding. You didn't even ask for ID, he said hoarsely. I'm sorry. We didn't know. I wear a badge. Around my neck. Students began shouting. Why didn't y'all check first? He didn't do anything. You tackled our vice principal. Within minutes, the school resource officer, Officer Ramirez, rushed out, horrified. What the hell is going on? He barked. Derrick, still kneeling, looked up at him. Ask your friends. Ramirez turned to the 3 cops. He works here. I've known him 5 years. The young officer's face crumpled. Another student's voice rang out. It's all on video. All of it. The footage spread like wildfire. 3 million views by midnight. Local news stations aired it on loop. The headline read, Houston assistant principal assaulted by police on campus. And just like that, Derrick Jones became a name trending across the country. But the bruise on his back didn't care about headlines. The trauma in his voice wasn't interested in likes. And the trust shattered in front of hundreds of students? That would take more than an apology to fix. The hours that followed the incident at Eastwood High were a blur for Derrick Jones. After the officers backed off and the students surrounded him in a dazed, protective circle, the school counselor escorted him to the nurse's office, though he hardly noticed the walk there. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by an eerie hollowness in his limbs. His throat was dry, the left side of his face throbbed, and his back was a twisted mess of pain and humiliation. The school nurse, a petite woman named Tasha with graying hair and kind eyes, pressed an ice pack gently to his cheekbone. She didn't ask what happened, she had seen it live like everyone else. I called your wife, she said quietly. She's on her way. Derrick closed his eyes. He didn't want to face her yet. He didn't want to face himself. Moments later, Principal Howard stormed into the room. His face was flushed, his tie loosened, and his voice trembled, not with fear, but fury. What the hell just happened? He snapped. Derrick looked up slowly. They thought I was a threat. To a student? On our campus. Apparently. Howard sat down heavily. This is going to be a mess. Press is already at the front gate. Phones won't stop ringing. District office wants a full report by noon. Derrick didn't respond. Howard lowered his voice. Are you okay? Derrick forced a bitter smile. No. There was a pause. Then, you don't have to speak to anyone today. Take the rest of the week off. Derrick shook his head. No. I need to be here. For them. He meant the students. By the time his wife, Nina, arrived, Derrick had composed himself just enough to stand. She burst into the nurse's office in jeans and a sweater, her face streaked with tears and rage. What happened to you? She whispered, holding his face in her hands. He tried to downplay it. It's not as bad as it looks. Don't lie to me, Derrick. He sighed. I couldn't stop them. I tried to explain, they didn't listen. Nina wrapped her arms around him tightly. We're pressing charges. Filing everything. You're not letting this go. He didn't answer. Not yet. Across the school, classrooms buzzed with conversation. Students couldn't focus. Teachers struggled to maintain order. Some students cried. Others were furious. A few printed screenshots from the video and taped them to lockers with bold letters that read, "We see you." Sophia Grant, the girl who made the call, sat frozen in the counselor's office, her face pale and her voice trembling. I didn't know it was him, she repeated. I just saw a man. I didn't mean it. The counselor didn't comfort her. Actions have consequences, she said gently. Sophia nodded numbly, tears sliding down her cheeks. By nightfall, the video had made national news. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Everyone had a take. Was this another case of racial profiling? Was this just a tragic misunderstanding? Derrick watched the coverage in silence from his couch, a heating pad pressed to his back. Nina sat beside him, her arm looped through his. The screen showed the moment he was tackled. Froze it. Zoomed in. His face half in shock, half in pain. The commentary swirled. But no one on the screen said what it felt like to be him in that moment. The next morning, the district superintendent called. I want you to know, she said, we stand with you. We're investigating this fully. Are they suspended? Derrick asked. The officers? Yes. They've been placed on temporary leave pending internal review. That's not enough. I understand. But he knew she didn't. The students organized a walkout 2 days later. Hundreds poured into the courtyard at 11 a.m. holding signs, chanting, "Protect our educators. Justice for Mr. Jones." Marcus stood on a bench with a megaphone. He's the one who helped me when I was failing. He didn't judge me. He didn't yell. He just listened. And they treated him like he was nothing. A chant began. Say his name, Mr. Jones. Say his name, Mr. Jones. Teachers watched from the windows. Some cried. Principal Howard stood near the back. He didn't stop them. He joined them. That night, Derrick sat at the dining table with a blank sheet of paper in front of him. It was supposed to be the formal statement he'd submit to Internal Affairs. But he couldn't find the words. What do you write when your dignity is stripped in front of children? When your authority is crushed under a stranger's knee? He looked up at Nina. What if it happens again? To someone else? She met his eyes. Then we make sure it doesn't. And with that, Derrick picked up the pen. The fallout was swift. The city's mayor called for an emergency review of police and school policies. Parents held town halls. Former students posted testimonials online. A hashtag trended, hashtag I had Mr. Jones. The 3 officers were identified. Their personnel files leaked. Previous complaints surfaced. One had 2 use of force violations. Another had been suspended in 2018 for conduct unbecoming. The narrative shifted from mistake to pattern. On a Friday afternoon, 1 week after the incident, Derrick returned to school. Students lined the hallway in silence as he walked in. Some clapped. Others whispered, "We missed you." Marcus approached, hands in his pockets. "You okay, Mr. Jones?" Derrick smiled softly. "Getting there." He paused. "Want to grab that soda at lunch?" Marcus beamed. "Yeah, I'd like that." But outside the school gates, a storm was still brewing. Because not everyone was rooting for justice. And Derrick Jones was about to learn, being right doesn't always keep you safe. By the start of the 3rd week after the incident, Derrick Jones was back in full stride, at least on the outside. He wore the same style of pressed shirt and slacks, his posture straight, his smile calm. But underneath the polished surface was a storm of unease that hadn't passed. Every time a police car rolled past the school, his breath hitched. Every time the PA system crackled, he tensed. And whenever a new face appeared in the hallway, part of him braced for something to go wrong again. He wasn't the only one carrying new scars. The faculty had quietly implemented trauma-informed teaching sessions. Counselors doubled their hours. Parents hovered at pickup times longer than before. And students, especially the black and brown kids, watched the front gates like sentinels. One Monday morning, Derrick was called into Principal Howard's office. The blinds were drawn. Howard looked uneasy. "We've had threats," he said. "Voicemails. Emails. Mostly from people outside the district. People who don't like that you've been speaking out." Derrick sat back. "Specific threats?" "Some named you. One mentioned your home address." Derrick felt his jaw tighten. "I want the school to stay safe. The kids. The staff. If I become a liability." "Stop right there," Howard said. "You're not the problem. They are. We're increasing security. We've got extra patrols outside. But I wanted you to hear it from me." Derrick nodded. "Appreciate it." But he couldn't shake the feeling that the circle was tightening. That week, Nina began noticing odd things. A man in a gray sedan parked across from their house 2 days in a row. The same white truck trailing her on the way to Terrence's daycare. A letter in their mailbox with no return address, just the words, "Some people need to learn their place." She called the police. A report was filed. Nothing came of it. That night, Derrick sat in the living room staring at the TV, though it wasn't on. Nina placed a cup of tea beside him. "Maybe we should go stay with your sister," she said. Derrick shook his head. "That's what they want. For me to disappear." "But what about us?" she whispered. "What about your son?" He turned to her, eyes tired. "I won't let them make me afraid to do the right thing." "But you are afraid." He didn't deny it. 3 days later, Derrick received an email from a student named Elijah, a senior he'd barely spoken to. The subject line simply read, "It happened to my dad." The message was short. "Mr. Jones, my dad got tackled like you in a parking lot 2 years ago. No video. No news. Just a broken jaw and a letter saying wrong identity. I never told anyone. But I saw what happened to you. I wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry you had to go through it too." Derrick stared at the screen for a long time. Then he hit reply. "You matter. Your voice matters. Thank you for trusting me. My door's always open." That Friday, the school hosted a student-led panel called Voices from the Front Steps. Derrick was invited to sit in the audience. He didn't expect to speak. But midway through, Marcus, bold and trembling, looked out over the crowd and said, "I don't think I knew what safety meant until I saw someone I trusted get taken down like a criminal. It messed me up. But it also made me want to be better. Smarter. Louder." Then he turned. "Mr. Jones, would you come up here?" There was a pause. Applause erupted. Derrick stood slowly, walked to the microphone, faced hundreds of students sitting cross-legged on the gym floor. He took a breath. "I used to think doing the right thing meant following the rules," he said. "Now I know it means challenging the rules when they're wrong. It means standing up even when your knees shake." He looked around the room at every face watching, waiting. "And if I ever had a question about whether this was worth it, I don't anymore." They rose to their feet. That night, Nina received another letter. This time, it was a printed screenshot of Derrick's speech. Across it, in red Sharpie, "Traitors raise traitors." She didn't show him. Not yet. Instead, she made a call to an old friend, a civil rights lawyer in Atlanta named Denise Porter. Within 48 hours, Denise flew to Houston. She met Derrick at a quiet diner, laid out her plan. "You've got the platform, the eyes, the credibility. Let's make it count. A civil suit, a community campaign, testimony before the education board." Derrick looked uncertain. "I'm not a politician. You're a symbol, Derrick, whether you like it or not. So let's make that mean something." The following week, Denise filed a formal lawsuit against the city and the officers involved. The paperwork was airtight. The press ran with it. Headlines splashed across TV screens. "Assistant principal files suit in viral assault case." But not everyone applauded. At night, their front door was egged. Someone keyed Nina's car. Online trolls flooded Derrick's school email with threats and slurs. Still, he showed up every day. Still, he stood tall. Still, he walked the halls and reminded students to be kind. Until one morning, he opened his mailbox to find a bullet casing taped to a handwritten note. "You're next." That was the last straw. The district put Derrick on paid administrative leave for his safety. Parents protested. Students walked out again. But this time, it wasn't just about a mistake. It was about power, about race, about whose pain mattered. And as Derrick packed his office, pulling down framed photos and books, he paused at the last item on his shelf, a wooden plaque with burned-in letters. "A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops." He placed it carefully into the box. Because he wasn't finished. He was just getting started. The first day away from school was the hardest. Derrick Jones woke at 6:15 a.m. as usual, his internal clock unbending. He moved through his morning routine by force of habit, shaving, dressing, brewing the same dark roast coffee he drank for 15 years. But when it came time to grab his keys and head out the door, his hand hovered, trembling slightly. The silence of the hallway felt wrong. No faint clatter of lockers opening. No students' voices bouncing off tile floors. No Marcus waiting near his office, pretending he wasn't hoping to be noticed. The home was quiet, but the world outside was not. News trucks idled down the street, reporters crouched behind tinted windows. Nina drew the curtains tight. They'd already had 2 phone calls from local stations asking for exclusive interviews. Derrick declined them all. His phone buzzed again. An unknown number. He didn't answer. Later, he sat in his backyard, the autumn sun leaking through the orange leaves, a legal pad open in his lap. The top of the page read, "What they took from me." He tried to write, but the words didn't come. Meanwhile, Denise Porter worked like a machine. She scheduled press briefings, drafted op-eds, coordinated with national education unions and civil rights groups. She arranged for Derrick to speak via video at a virtual symposium titled "When Authority Fails the Classroom." The clip of his speech, calm, fierce, heartbreakingly precise, went viral. More importantly, it reached the parents. Emails poured in. "My daughter came home crying. I had to explain why a black man got tackled for helping kids. My son drew a picture of you with a cape. He said you're his new hero. They need to see you in." But for every message of support, a shadow followed. A package arrived one morning without a return address. Inside, a children's book Derrick had read aloud to first graders last year. The pages had been slashed. A sticky note attached read, "You don't belong in front of kids." Nina insisted they go to the police again. The officer they spoke with this time took it seriously. He promised increased patrols. Promised to loop in federal authorities due to the lawsuit. But trust, once broken, was not so easily repaired. On the 3rd Friday since his forced leave, Derrick received a letter from the school board. It was short. "Pending the outcome of legal proceedings and due to safety concerns, your status remains under review. Please refrain from visiting school property until further notice." He read it twice, then 3 times. Then he tore it in half. That evening, he met with Denise and Cheryl, another education attorney who had joined the team, in a quiet hotel lounge. The tone had shifted. This was no longer just a wrongful detainment case. It was now a matter of public trust. Derrick, Cheryl said, you've got momentum. But this is where it gets risky. They'll try to settle. They'll try to silence you. They'll try to reframe the story. They already have, Derrick muttered. One outlet said I escalated by stepping toward the officers. Another said I was wearing ambiguous clothing. Denise scoffed. You were in business casual with a school ID. Doesn't matter, Derrick said. It's not about facts. It's about fear. Then give them something stronger than fear, Cheryl said. A week later, Derrick held a public forum at the Greater Heights Community Church. It was packed. Parents, teachers, students, activists, cameras. He took the pulpit not as a victim but as a leader. I didn't come here to relive trauma, he began. I came here to reclaim it. What happened to me wasn't a one-time mistake. It was the symptom of a deeper sickness, one that says black educators are suspect before they are trusted. One that tells our kids their mentors are disposable. The room was electric. People stood, cheered, cried. Afterward, a young man in his 20s approached. My name's Darren. I'm in a teaching program at UT. I almost dropped out after seeing what happened to you. But now, he choked up. Now I want to fight harder. Derrick shook his hand. Then we fight together. By month's end, the city was under pressure. National media, federal scrutiny, internal affairs investigations. The police department issued a second statement, this time naming the 3 officers. 2 were suspended without pay. 1 had resigned. The city offered a settlement. Derrick declined. No dollar amount restores the message this sent to every child watching, he told the press. Instead, he demanded 3 things. 1. Mandatory anti-bias and de-escalation training for all school resource officers. 2. A student-led committee to review safety protocols. 3. A formal public apology to every student who witnessed the assault. They balked, but the public didn't. Terrence, Derrick's 7-year-old son, asked him one night, "Are you going back to school, Daddy?" Derrick smiled, lifting him onto his lap. "Not today, but someday." Terrence nodded. "My teacher said she saw you on TV. She said you're brave." Derrick kissed his forehead. "Only because of you." 2 weeks later, the school board voted. In a narrow 4-3 decision, Derrick Jones was formally reinstated as assistant principal of Eastwood High School. The following Monday, he walked through the school gates as a free man, not escorted, not silenced. Students lined the halls once again. Teachers clapped. Marcus fist-bumped him. Even Principal Howard, red-eyed, gave him a long, firm handshake. Derrick looked out over the students. "They didn't break us," he said. "They just reminded us what we're made of." But just as the dust seemed to settle, Denise received a call. A confidential informant had come forward, and what he revealed would change everything. Denise Porter stared at the secure file for nearly 10 minutes before calling Derrick. "This isn't just bigger than we thought," she said. "It's systemic." The confidential informant had worked in the internal compliance unit of the Houston Police Department. He was mid-level, buried under layers of chain of command, but he had access. Emails, memos, body cam logs, complaint records that were never filed, incident reviews that had been edited, sanitized. And among those files? A training document. It outlined a pattern recognition protocol for school resource officers. Buried in that language were cues specifically highlighting Black and Latino male behaviors as potential escalation triggers. A flowchart, color-coded, showed response levels based on student body language with disproportionate emphasis on non-compliance indicators like lowered eyes, hands in pockets, and silence. They coded racism into procedure, Derrick whispered as he scrolled through the PDFs. "This is what they teach?" "It gets worse," Denise said. 3 of the cases you flagged, students tackled, detained, suspended, were marked in these files as resolved, but the resolution lines are blank. Derrick leaned back. How many people knew? More than we want to believe, but less than they hoped would stay quiet. That week, Denise held a closed-door meeting with 2 investigative journalists. They reviewed the files. They verified sources. They dug deeper. The bombshell report was scheduled to run on Sunday. In the meantime, Derrick returned to work, but the air had changed. Parents called the office in waves, half in support, half in concern. Some said he was brave. Others called him a liability. He overheard whispers in the teacher's lounge. A few colleagues avoided eye contact. The principal remained cordial but distant. Only the students stayed steady. They passed him in the hallway with quiet nods. Left sticky notes on his door. "We believe you. You matter. Never stop fighting." That Sunday, the exposé dropped. The Houston algorithm, policing by profile. It trended within 2 hours. The city council called an emergency session. Protests reignited. The school board held a televised meeting, swamped by parents holding copies of the report. Derrick was asked to attend. He wore his uniform. When given the microphone, he didn't raise his voice. "I stood here weeks ago asking for accountability," he said. "Now I ask for courage. Courage to tear down what was never just. Courage to listen to the people you've ignored. Courage to admit that sometimes the danger is not in the hallway but in the handbook." A long silence followed. Then a slow rising of hands. Teachers, students, even a few board members. Standing, applauding. 2 days later, the Houston superintendent announced the immediate suspension of all SRO programs pending external review. Retraining was ordered. A statewide task force was formed with Derrick named as an advisor. He declined the paycheck. "I'm not doing this for profit," he said. "I'm doing this so no child has to flinch when help walks into the room." But the backlash didn't die. Someone spray-painted race baiter across his driveway. A rock crashed through his front window late one night. Terrence, sleeping in his room, screamed. They moved him into their room after that. Even Nina began to crack. "How long can we live like this?" "As long as it takes," Derrick said. But the words felt thin. One evening, as Derrick prepared notes for an upcoming town hall, a knock sounded at the door. He opened it to find Elijah, the senior who'd emailed him weeks earlier, standing with a duffel bag in hand. "My dad kicked me out," he said. "What? Why?" "He said I embarrassed the family by speaking out. I didn't know where else to go." Derrick stepped aside. "Then you're home." That night, the three of them, Derrick, Nina, and Elijah, ate spaghetti around the kitchen table. The TV played quietly in the background. Terrence watched cartoons. Elijah smiled weakly. "I used to think people like you didn't exist," he said. "People who fight no matter what." Derrick shook his head. "I used to think I couldn't be one of them." Weeks passed. Legislation moved forward. The city settled the civil suit, but Derrick insisted the funds be redirected half to student mental health programs, half to educator safety training. The plaque in his office now sat beside a new one. "Let this be the last time." At graduation that spring, Marcus walked the stage. He wore a blue gown, a trembling smile, and a pin that read, #I had Mr. Jones. When he shook Derrick's hand, he pulled him into a hug. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up." The story didn't end with a viral video, or a lawsuit, or even an apology. It ended with the boy going home safer, a teacher standing taller, and a city forced to reckon with itself. Real justice begins when we refuse to stay silent. Derrick Jones stood up not only for himself but for every child, teacher, and parent who ever feared the system meant to protect them. One man's courage can expose an entire structure and spark a movement that redefines trust, safety, and dignity in America's schools. If this story touched your heart, hit like to show your support, share to help this message reach more people, and subscribe to hear more true stories that deserve to be seen, heard, and felt. Together, we demand better.